Your habits are not neutral. They are not harmless routines. Every habit you repeat is actively rewiring your brain, strengthening neural pathways that either support growth or reinforce stagnation. Right now, your weak habits are programming you for failure. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt based on repeated behavior. What you do consistently shapes the structure of your mind. If your habits revolve around ease, your brain adapts to prefer ease. When you repeat a behavior, dopamine reinforces the action. The brain marks it as valuable. Over time, the pathway becomes automatic. You stop thinking. You simply default to the pattern. Weak habits compound quietly. One late night becomes a pattern. One skipped workout becomes a default. One postponed task becomes identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who does not follow through. The danger is not a single weak choice. The danger is repetition. Repetition creates automation, and automation becomes who you are without conscious awareness. Every time you choose distraction over focus, you strengthen the distraction pathway. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you deepen the preference for comfort. The brain does not judge. It adapts. Weak habits do not feel destructive in the moment. They feel normal. They feel deserved. But normal is simply what you have repeated enough times to make automatic. Your morning routine programs your day. If you wake up and immediately reach for stimulation, you train your brain to expect instant reward. Deep work becomes uncomfortable because your system was primed for speed. If your default response to boredom is entertainment, you are conditioning yourself to avoid stillness. Stillness is where clarity develops. Without stillness, decisions become reactive instead of intentional. Habits shape identity more than beliefs do. You can believe you are disciplined while your habits prove otherwise. The brain trusts patterns, not intentions. Most men do not realize they are being conditioned by their own behavior. They blame external circumstances while their daily patterns quietly reinforce weakness. The brain optimizes for efficiency, not excellence. If scrolling is easier than reading, the brain will prefer scrolling. If lying down is easier than training, the brain will default to lying down. Weak habits create weak neural architecture. When the pathways for discipline are rarely used, they weaken. When pathways for distraction are constantly reinforced, they dominate decision-making. You become what you practice. If you practice postponement, you become someone who postpones. If you practice avoidance, you become someone who avoids. Inconsistency is also a habit. When you repeatedly start and stop, you train yourself to expect failure. The brain begins to anticipate collapse instead of completion. Habits do not require motivation. That is their power and their danger. You can drift into weakness without ever deciding to be weak. Automation handles it for you. Weak habits lower your standards without announcement. What once felt unacceptable slowly becomes tolerable. What once felt tolerable becomes normal. What becomes normal defines identity. The brain does not care if the habit serves you long-term. It only cares if the pattern is repeated. Repetition equals priority in the nervous system. You cannot think your way out of weak habits. Awareness alone does not rewire pathways. Only consistent counter-behavior creates new architecture. Weak habits thrive in unstructured environments. Without deliberate systems, you default to the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is always the most repeated pathway. Rewiring does not happen overnight. It happens through deliberate repetition of better behavior. Small, consistent actions rebuild neural preference over time. The first step is interruption. You disrupt the automatic loop. Instead of reaching for the phone, you pause. Instead of choosing comfort, you choose controlled discomfort. Interruption creates awareness. Awareness creates choice. Choice, when repeated, creates new pathways. Those pathways strengthen with consistency. You replace weak habits with structured alternatives, not through willpower alone, but through environmental design and repeated exposure to better patterns. Consistency is the only mechanism that rewires the brain. One strong choice means nothing. 10 strong choices create a signal. 100 strong choices create identity. The brain resists change initially. It prefers established pathways because they require less energy. But when new behavior is repeated consistently, resistance declines. Discipline is not a personality trait. It is a practiced behavior that becomes automatic through repetition. The more you practice restraint, the easier restraint becomes. Strong habits build momentum. Momentum reduces decision fatigue. When discipline becomes automatic, you stop negotiating with yourself about basic actions. Your environment either supports strong habits or enables weak ones. If temptation is always within reach, resistance becomes constant effort. Remove the temptation, and resistance becomes unnecessary. Structure removes the need for constant willpower. When your environment is designed for focus, focus becomes the default. When distractions are eliminated, discipline requires less effort. Rebuilding takes time, but the process is predictable. Interrupt the weak pattern. Replace it with intentional behavior. Repeat until the new pattern becomes automatic. Weak habits rewired you into someone reactive. Strong habits rewire you into someone controlled. The brain does not care which direction you go. It simply follows repetition. Identity shifts when behavior shifts. You do not become disciplined by deciding to be disciplined. You become disciplined by practicing discipline until it becomes who you are. Most men wait for motivation to change their habits, but motivation is unreliable. Structure is reliable. Systems are reliable. Repetition is reliable. The brain will adapt to whatever you consistently expose it to. If you expose it to distraction, it adapts to distraction. If you expose it to discipline, it adapts to discipline. You are not stuck with the habits you currently have. You are stuck only if you refuse to interrupt them. Interruption is the first act of control. Weak habits made you reactive. Strong habits make you intentional. And intention, when repeated consistently, becomes identity. Your brain is not working against you. It is simply following the instructions you give it through your behavior. Change the behavior, and the brain follows. Habits are either programming you for strength or programming you for weakness. There is no neutral ground. Every repeated action is shaping your future capacity. Weak habits rewired you into someone distracted. Strong habits rewire you into someone controlled. The choice is not one time, it is daily. Master yourself. Command your life.